Jason, thanks for joining us. First, if you wouldn't just tell everyone who you are, what your title is, and who you work for.
Sure, great. Thanks for having us on. I'm Jason E. Smith from Liquidware, and I'm the Vice President of Marketing. Liquidware is a company that does desktop transformation. Any type of Windows desktop, including and especially virtual desktops, which is what VMware and Citrix is all about, but there's other players out there as well. We have a whole cycle of products called our Workspace Environment Management that helps onboard those users, so we can assess your old desktops to see if they're ready to go to new desktops, and your old users to get a historic data out of the users to see which ones might be prepared to have a virtual desktop, so good candidates for those. And then we can move those over with our migration solution that's part of our user environment management known as Profile Unity. And then we can also layer in applications with a technology called Flex Apps, so they don't even have to be in the base image. So it streamlines the way that you deliver VDI and virtual desktops. We can do the same thing for physical desktops as well, making things easier, much the same way IGEL does.
So IGEL, what's your relationship with IGEL?
The thin client that IGEL has and the thin OS, we can help monitor the session that's going on that. Today, that means that if that's a Citrix session or a VMware session, we can monitor that and know if the experience is also a good, fair, or poor user experience. And not attributable to the thin OS or the thin client itself, but the overall holistic session. We're looking at many variables, everything from what's going on in the data center on those servers, to the network path, to those hops, and we're able to do monitor the thin client itself through a client that we just introduced that will go all the way down and give you trace route information and a bunch of other things, so you know holistically if that user is having a good, fair, or poor user session before they call the help desk. And you can head off problems before they occur and identify those, remediate them. It also is used to help grow and scale. So you might be putting your toe in the water of a VDI project, a virtual desktop project, or a RDS project from Microsoft, and you can see what the current user experience is, and then you can grow and scale that as you size up accordingly, add more hardware here or resources there.
So you're, I guess, agnostic somewhat in the market because you're trying to provide the best solutions for your clients. Where do you see IGEL relative to its competition in terms of providing that robust solution for users?
IGEL's been an innovator. We've been partners with them loosely at first, probably in 2009 when we launched, and we had some common customers in kind. One of the world's largest home improvement chains was a joint customer of ours, and they were delivering their first virtual desktops. So that joint customer was a model of us going forward and working well with the IGEL field team to make sure that customers had what they needed at every stage of the process that we can take them through as well to help ensure that with a smooth transition over and that the customer had full visibility into those environments.
Where do you see IGEL with its position of service-led solution or software-led solutions?
It's a great market opportunity that IGEL has because it's, as you said, it's no longer about the hardware itself. We run into organizations, and we have more than 2,000 customers in this part of the business that deliver their virtual desktops in many different ways. And sometimes that's a hardware thin client from any manufacturer, and sometimes that's a repurposed desktop PC. Doesn't have to be even that robust to be able to get onto that session to load. So the way that IGEL with their OS ties all those together and gives you a single point of management makes that so much easier for the customer and is really a solution that is in need in this market, because we've said it since the beginning of starting Liquidware. The future of Windows is heterogeneous. That doesn't mean operating system only, that doesn't mean applications only, but it's the way you deliver those desktops, and it's also how you deliver those desktops, whether they're coming from a thin OS model or a repurposed PC and all that, and IGEL works excellently to pull those together to centrally manage those.
We've had some customers in here who have talked about the fact that whether it's an IGEL thin client or it's basically taking some old boat of a ThinkPad and plugging the USB into it, that they're able to provide a really robust user experience regardless of what the hardware is under it.
Exactly, it makes their life easier. So the administrator in this world of heterogeneity, as I described it, right? Not every organization is going to standardize on an endpoint, and IGEL allows them to do that. have one point of touch for all their desktops. So interesting position that IGEL's in the market.
So if you're out there partnering with a company, your reputation's on the line as well as IGEL's. Right. How do you find the support IGEL gives you and therefore your customers?
Well, we've got some excellent field relationships going on, dating back to that beginning I was talking about of Liquidware. That the IGEL SEs on the front line, system engineers, have been a pleasure to work with at all indications, and the sales teams as well. So there's a lot of collaboration going on even at a field level, and it's always been a pleasure to work with the teams at IGEL, especially because we share projects, what's going on, and we help customers truly together. So we're really solving a need in the industry together when we work together.
That's great. And this business, I think you've already implied, if not said, is something that you're seeing growing and growing because for a lot of reasons. And the three that seem to be coming out consistently are security, cost, low cost, and being able to create that experience. Do you see that similarly, or are those the three things that your customers are asking you for?
They are, but user experience, I would add to that a great deal, and that's where we come into play to complement the IGEL offerings. That doesn't mean just knowing the user experience with our solution Stratosphere, but it also means providing the user experience with Profile Unity, because we can map drives and printers and do a lot of policy things that might be hard to do. We pull those together centrally, much the way that IGEL's pulling together the central management of the endpoint management.
And talk to me about security for a minute, if you would. Obviously, big issue for everyone.
It is. Absolutely. So we are certified to run in the most secure environments in the world. We do a heavy amount of business in the Fed space, the federal government space. And so all of our solutions have passed certifications to be able to do that efficiently. We do, as I said, a fair amount of business there and have great confidence there. There's some places in the federal government we're not even sure where we're running that are air-gapped, that we have a relationship with a consultant. They can't even call us from on site. So we're in a pretty good position there with our certifications. And sometimes I think with pride how we're in those spots. And IGEL, of course, great compliment to that, because known for their security and the way that they provide that single point of management with security in mind.
And do you find when you're talking to customers that providing this experience, the IGEL experience, to people out on the fringe, as I like to think of them, but they're healthcare professionals, they're people in retail, they're people in financial services and so on, are you finding that this solution is actually taking some of the weight off the traditional help desk and IT function who are sitting there waiting for things to go wrong? Are you finding that happening?
It does. I think in our solutions have a common goal of doing that. We pull together the end user experience the same way that the endpoint is pulled together there. It makes things more efficient. With IGEL, it seems that instead of just managing one thin client, you have the ability to repurpose your thin clients and pull them all under one OS with IGEL. Single pane of glass. I don't know if that's the same term that IGEL uses, but it's the way I think about IGEL being able to singularly manage those. And we do a similar thing with the user environment, the way that we bring the users under a single pane of glass for managing policies and profiles, access to user author data, and bringing in their applications into the Windows part of the equation.
We were just talking to a customer who has thousands of agents out there, and they said what's great about the IGEL solution is they can actually send messages individually out to agents through the OS. Right. Is that unique?
It sounds like an interesting use case from what you just told me about, but we find virtual desktops in general are used for that type of use case, for solution use case. And we have several customers that we've experienced that use it for a secure single point of management. And that's another reason why we have a large federal government following for Liquidware products. So it's a common goal, again, that we're solving with IGEL, where we're seeing in the field together.
And are there any use cases that you talked about the federal government? Are there any others that jump out at you when you say, wow, we went in with IGEL and bammo, we had a great success with a hospital or wherever?
We do have, I feel sure, several hospital mutual customers in mind. Hospital is a great use case for VDI in general, virtual desktops, and also RDS type of a desktop. Those places where you find workers move and are mobile from one desktop to the next, doctors and nurses, education. Let's talk about that a little bit while we're talking about healthcare, because that's another area we cross over. But to bounce back to healthcare, if you're signing in with IGEL, on a thin client, and you may be integrating with Imprivata, so you're tapping in, tapping out. We work well with Imprivata too, as another co-partner that we both are working with as an alliance partner. IGEL provides that endpoint that comes in, whether it's a repurposed or one OS that is coming through, and then that's where we kick in and Profile Unity, our user environment management, runs, and that doctor has a very personalized experience. So if he hits print, you can even customize the desktop to where he didn't have to map to a printer. He hits print, and it's automatically knows the IP that he's hit, so it's going to go to the printer close to him. Well, now when he goes up to the 10th floor and taps in again, uses IGEL, uses Imprivata, and then Profile Unity provides the experience. Well, he hits print there, it prints to the printer. It knows, it moves. Context-aware settings is what we call this. So if you're looking for a full set of solutions to deliver those desktops, IGEL, along with a partner like VMware or Citrix, and those emerging solutions out there like AWS, we haven't even spoken about, end-to-end user experience for a virtual desktop, I think it's a great combination.
Any others other than, you mentioned healthcare, which is a great one.
Right.
You said there were several. That's why I'm going to ask you if there were any others.
Well, I was speaking about this earlier with one of the IGEL reps where we overlap. And one of the things that where we overlap again is the two we mentioned, but also financial, manufacturing, and then legal is where we see some of the core markets that we also you see Citrix in, Microsoft in general in, but Citrix in, and those providing a thin or a virtual experience, a virtual desktop. That's the same place you'll find our customer base, and I believe IGEL's customer base, where they have a common set of problems, and we can be there as an alliance partner with IGEL to help solve those the way that we're already doing successfully.
Great. That was terrific. Thanks so much for being with us. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me again, and thanks for being a great partner.